We are putting the recording on just to make sure that the material is available to all of our folks who may have wanting to join in today, but for whatever reason wasn't able to come. So then they'll have the opportunity to also get the information. So let me just be the very first one to welcome all of you to Campa Talks. Really, really exciting to have many of you come back for this conversation today. We had an awesome session yesterday, and very much looking forward to today. And so we created Campa Talks. So just very quickly, Gerda Nicolas, I am Secretary General within Campa, and really excited to welcome all of you to this session. And we created Campa Talks not only because we recognize with COVID, this was an opportunity for us to pivot and find out how we were still going to be able to connect with each other in the midst of this pandemic, right? And how do we, because oftentimes we have symposium in each other's nations, but this was an opportunity for us to see how can we still connect. And we're really super excited that Campa Talk is proving to be the very best way for us to still connect within the region, but also at the same time to build our capacity building in terms of areas where we could really all get a chance to learn from, but also just to utilize the amazing assets that we have in the region. Many of our folks will be able to showcase the talent and the amazing work that a lot of our colleagues are doing and being able to connect with one another. So in that spirit, I say a special welcome to all of you. I'm gonna let Rita introduce and be our official moderators, but I just wanted to very quickly go over a few Zoom etiquettes for this evening as we get ourselves organized for that. I'm just gonna very quickly share my screen with you regarding that. In a minute. See, yep. So first of all, we're asking please that all of you mute yourself during the presentation, so that way that everybody can have an opportunity to hear the speakers when they are speaking. Please type all your questions and comments, anything that's popping in your head, you can drop them in the chat. We will be moderating the chat and really letting our moderator, Dr. Grant, knows all of the questions that might be coming up, so she doesn't have to look at all of the chat. I'll be there to help with that. So if you want to be able to see the speaker, to fill your whole entire screen instead of seeing these individual ones, you can just click speaker view and you'll get a chance to do so. I'm going to pin the speakers so that way they're always ahead, they're always going to be in the forefront, so I'll pin them as well so you can see them. But if you want to see them in full view, that's the best way to do so as well. Again, we're asking you to really use the everyone chat function for the general messages only, and that if you want to send personal chat messages to each other, to really just do directly to the individual so that the messages don't go directly to everyone. And again, following each of the presentation tonight, you'll get a chance to ask any questions that you have regarding, from each of the speakers. So with that, it gives me immense honor and privilege to welcome our very dear colleague, friend, leader within the Campa executive team. She's been a part of this since we started this organization many years ago. It gives me incredible pleasure to welcome Dr. Rita Dudley Grant, who will be your moderator for this evening. Dr. Grant.
Well, thank you extremely well. Thank you. Dr. Nicolas, Gerda is a truly the all-encompassing backbone of this organization, and we have done so very much to make sure that we stay focused. And just a little bit about Campa, everyone should know that we're the Alliance of National Psychological Associations, and our members are national associations in the Caribbean. We now have 13 members plus the CADISIC, which are people living elsewhere, not in the Caribbean, that are joining our association. So we're really happy to have you here. And without further ado, I would like to introduce our speakers. As you know, our topic today is on virtual supervision, but it's going to expand out over all that we are doing to train up and to encourage and to inspire our students and interns and so on, and trainees, and just the joy of teaching in the Caribbean.
So I don't know.
Our key,
Sorry,
sorry?
Maida, I didn't want to interrupt you. I didn't know if you wanted to do the governor's message first before you went.
Yes,
the.
absolutely. Let
Yeah,
us do
I was
that. Let
ready
us
for
do
you.
that. Thank you so much, our dear governor. Absolutely.
Okay.
We're going to have a welcome from the governor.
Awesome. Let me just time it up so it can be first up, ready to go. If I can find my share screen. There it is. Okay. There you go.
Welcome to Campa Talks. I am Albert Bryan Jr., Governor of the U.S. Virgin Islands. As you know, the CRCP conference was scheduled to be hosted on our beautiful island of St. Croix this year. But as in many of your locations, the COVID-19 pandemic has changed our plans, but definitely not our enthusiasm. We are excited about this year's Campa Talks because it will allow us to keep the conversation going about issues that concern us all: racial justice in the Caribbean, and Indigenous healing. Please engage fully in the virtual sessions this year, and thank you so much for attending. And yes, we are even more excited to know that the local organizing committee, the Association of Virgin Islands Psychologists, and the regional organization of CAMPA continue working together to bring a world-class conference on St. Croix next year. Please plan to attend the CRCP 2020 Plus, Caribbean Resilience, Psychology's Response to Historical Contemporary Disasters from November 17th through the 20th, 2021. We want you to leave St. Croix refreshed and inspired and ready to take on new endeavors at home. On behalf of Lieutenant Governor Mackenzie A. Roach and the people of the U.S. Virgin Islands, we look forward to meeting you next year. I wish you much success with Campa Talks.
Excellent. Excellent, excellent. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So we really do look forward to you joining us. And we can announce here that our conference will be the 15th to the 20th of November, and it will be a hybrid conference. So you can attend hopefully in person, please do come, and a virtual opportunity. So this is a pilot project where really is cutting edge, establishing a new way of bringing people together that I think will fit excellently well in the Caribbean. So let me introduce our three wonderful speakers. We're very much appreciative of their willingness to work with us and to present and share their experiences. So Donna Maria Maynard is professor of psychology at the University of the West Indies. She is a registered clinical psychologist in Barbados. She trained in the UK before migrating to Barbados and completing her PhD at UWI, Cave Hill. She has a background in mental health and education, having worked in both secondary and tertiary institutions, providing psychological support services. She has over 20 years of university teaching and clinical experience and supervision. She has published a number of scholarly articles on youth identity development, psychological assessment, and psychoeducational issues affecting students and teachers. And she is a past president of the Barbados Society of Psychologists. So she will be talking with us on contemporary challenges in the Caribbean, training and supervision. And then we go on. I'll just do all three right now, if that is okay. We'll go on to Dr. Mike Campbell. And he also is in Barbados. He's a senior lecturer in behavioral science psychology with the Faculty of Medical Sciences at the University of the West Indies, Cave Hill, Barbados. He's chair of the Ministry of Health Research Ethics Committees, and the HIV/AIDS Response Program. He teaches in the clinical psychiatry undergraduate and residence programs and publishes in the area of psychological measurement, health psychology, and research ethics. Dr. Campbell received his BA in psychology and Latin American studies from the New College of Florida, MS in geography from Florida State University, and PhD in counseling psychology from the University of Florida. He then internship and did his postdoc there at the University of South Florida and addresses Caribbean health psychology, including infection control, medication adherence, and sexual stigma. He also is a past president of the Barbados Society of Psychology, a member of the American Psychological Association, and associate fellow of the British Psychological Society. And he will be talking with us about contemporary challenges in the Caribbean and supervision. And last but never, ever, ever least, we have Dr. Dara Hamilton, and she is an assistant professor of psychology at the University of the Virgin Islands and head of the psychology master's program. She is also a licensed clinical psychologist who owns and operates the Lotus Center for Wellbeing, a private practice on the island of St. Croix. Dr. Hamilton is at heart a community psychologist who believes in seeking health solutions in the forms of individual and systems change and advocating for social justice. And by the way, she too is a past president of the Association of Virgin Islands Psychologists. So we welcome all three of our wonderful speakers. And at this point, I will turn it over to Dr. Maynard for our first presentation. Thank you. Unmute, please. Unmute, Donna Maria.
Hello.
Okay.
Just give me 1 millisecond. Why is my...
Okay, we're hearing you a little bit now, but if you can be louder.
Okay.
That's it. Okay, I think we're good.
Okay, there is my... Can you see my... Ooh, why is this not coming up? Hold a second. Sorry, just give me 1 second.
No worries. Take your time.
Okay. It's telling me that my screen sharing has failed to start. I don't know why. Let me...
Let's see if I can help out with that.
Share.
Oh, wait, it's for her to do it, yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Oh, basic. Okay. So I'm seeing it now. All right.
Okay, perfect.
There you go.
There we go.
There you are. Let me
All
go.
right.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank both Dr. Gerda Nicola and Dr. Dudley Grant for the very warm welcome. And thank you to CanPA for inviting me to address you all this evening. I would also like to thank and congratulate the members of the organizing committee for their dedication and commitment to ensuring that we stay connected and continue to move forward with the development of psychological research and practice in the region, especially during these challenging times. Let me click away. Okay. I should also mention really that I'm heartened to have been invited to speak on an issue that has been very dear to my heart for some time now. And hence I hope that some of the information that I'm sharing from my forthcoming work, Crossroads in Psychology, Education and Training, A Roadmap to the Future, will contribute to the discussion and action that are necessary to further develop psychological research and practice in our beloved Caribbean. For truth be told, whether considering virtual supervision or not, we need to get our house in order first, okay? Right. So let me start by saying that currently, I'm going to take off my glasses, currently in the Caribbean, we are at a crossroads. Over the past 20 years, there has been great developments in undergraduate programming and graduate training in psychology, and the time is now ripe to take the next step in redefining the trajectories of psychological education and training. It is a time for reflection, evaluation, revision, and recognizing that there's still a way to go in advancing robust postgraduate programs that serve to fortify research and practice in psychology throughout the region. As I first argued some years ago in my article entitled "The History and Current Status of Psychology in Barbados, Research and Professional Practice, there continues to be a need to build a strong corpus of practitioners across the Caribbean who engage in research to develop the field of psychology. This will help to ensure that future practice will be guided by Caribbean theories and Caribbean informed techniques. And this is very important. Okay. Just to give you an overview of what I'm going to present over the next few minutes, I'm going to begin by sharing the genesis of psychology postgraduate education and training programs that prepare students to be professional psychologists in the English-speaking Caribbean by answering the question, what is our current reality? Then I will look at some of the areas for improvement that arise from the existing programs and culminate with some recommendations on the way forward for the education and training of professional psychologists in the region. I will only be speaking, I must put this disclaimer in, that I will only be speaking with reference to programs of the University of the West Indies' 3 landed campuses. That's Barbados, Jamaica, and Trinidad and Tobago. And I will primarily be referencing clinical supervision, I will primarily be referencing clinical supervision, which is essential for the training of professional psychologists in the region, as well as those who are actually practicing, okay? And that, I'm stressing that because I want to stress or differentiate that I'm not speaking about research supervision that is provided for MPhil and PhD programs in the Caribbean, which is essential for those who are training to be researchers, all right? Okie dokes. So I'll start by telling you that in recognition of the need for more psychologists in the English-speaking Caribbean, the University of the West Indies Mona campus in Jamaica was the first to begin a 2-year Masters of Science Clinical Psychology degree program way back in 1983, employing the scientist practitioner model. The program, which was quickly retired due to a lack of resources, was reinstated in 2001 and modeled on the then UK Masters in Clinical Psychology, which was a terminal training degree program for preparing professional psychologists, because at that time in the UK's development, you only needed a master's degree to practice, register and practice as a psychologist. Since 2006, that has changed. It has been upgraded to the PhD. Now, flipping back to Jamaica, the program is delivered jointly by the Department of Sociology, Psychology and Social Work, and that of Community Health and Psychiatry, and consists of bi-weekly seminars in research, psychopharmacology, and professional development, as well as a year-long group experience and completion of 6 sessions of individual therapy. Now, Mona went on to launch a PhD program in clinical psychology the following year in 2002. At the time, Hicklin and Matthews proposed that these 2 postgraduate programs, the MSc and the PhD in clinical psychology, were to serve as prototypes for the development of such programs within the region. However, the PhD program was short-lived, again, due to a lack of human resources, especially as it relates to those trained in clinical supervision, and the necessary infrastructure to provide the kind of education and training required at that level. Now, moving on to Trinidad and Tobago, in 2006, the UWI began offering the MSc Clinical Psychology modeled after the Jamaican program through their Department of Clinical Medical Sciences at Mount Hope in Trinidad. However, the program ran for approximately 10 years before ceasing enrollment of students in 2017. Now, largely, again, as a result of costs involved in providing clinical supervision, the program couldn't maintain those costs and they had to stop taking in students, and is still on a type of hiatus at the moment because there are a few students that are kind of in limbo and have not completed the program. Okay. In Barbados at the Cave Hill campus in 2006, the MSc Counseling Psychology program was offered through the Department of Government Sociology and Social Work, initially manned by part-time lecturers who commuted mainly from the Mona campus. Hence, the program was structured such that classes would be scheduled on weekends. And there was a 500-hour practicum requirement with clinical supervision provided by a wide variety of mental health practitioners across the Eastern Caribbean. So they weren't only being placed in sites with psychologists providing clinical supervision, but they were also receiving clinical supervision or supervision of some sort from a wide variety of mental health practitioners, be it social workers, mental health counselors, drug abuse counselors, and so forth. Okay. There were some arrangements made for students to fulfill their practicum hours at sites outside of the Caribbean. That was just for a couple of students who actually conducted their clinical internship or practicum in North America. Now, the program was revamped in 2013 to offer students the choice of a research or practice option, veering away from the scientist practitioner model. Hence, some students would graduate without ever having conducted an independent research project to demonstrate that they had honed necessary research skills. The training hours were raised to 1,000 hours, with 560 of those being direct counseling hours. Now, as in the UK, the academic teaching in these UWI master's programs occurred concurrently in the latter half of the programs with the clinical placement, progressing from the initial observational role of the students to a partial week practicum placement, extending to a 4-day week placement in the summer. The programs cover the lifespan and consider a broad range of client groups relevant to the local context. As a result of the small number of clinical psychologists in practice across the English-speaking Caribbean, there continue to be limited opportunities for practicum sites. In the case of Trinidad, Hutchinson and Rose in 2011 reported that supervision of practicum experience was provided by a range of professionals, and that placement supervision was supplemented by group supervision by university faculty. However, this was not the case across all of the UWI programs. And it's noteworthy that the need to seek some internships outside the Caribbean over the years has occurred largely since there were not enough experienced qualified professional psychologists available to provide that clinical supervision, as well as a need to expose students to different client groups. For example, in Barbados, most of the psychologists tend to work with children. Okay, so what are the main issues that arise from the current postgraduate education and training programs within the English-speaking Caribbean? I have 5 points that I want to share here, okay? Now, first of all, in some cases, there's a need for an appropriate period of supervised practical experience under professional psychologists in the Caribbean, since the cultural relevance of the training and experience gained could be jeopardized by conducting practicums outside of the Caribbean. Okay. Secondly, a major challenge is that there are not enough practicing psychologists with doctorates in professional psychology, coursework, and adequate training in clinical supervision to serve as site supervisors for the practicum component of the current MSc programs that we run. Thirdly, there are a limited number of positions or appropriate sites in government or elsewhere for psychologists, which also limits the training ground for future and current students' practica. Fourthly, the programs include a summer practicum, and generally, as we know in private practice, especially within the Caribbean, there's a slower pace during the summer months. Hence, for students, this results in exposure to a lower number of cases, a lower caseload, in addition to the fact that many professional psychologists vacation during the summer months and are unwilling to take on the responsibility of clinical supervision at that time. Fifthly, there's limited research on culturally relevant practice within the region, which leaves us to continually rely on European and North American models. Right. There are a few other pitfalls to be considered as a result of the current training model employed. In contexts such as ours, where there are a very limited number of practicum sites, many are not trained in clinical supervision, and students are at the mercy of sites that they can access, we have to question where the checks and balances are to ensure that those providing clinical supervision do no harm to the students. Furthermore, what mechanisms are in place to mitigate against students harming clients? Do the clinical supervisors take clinical responsibility for the caseload? Moreover, how do you grant satisfaction to students who feel aggrieved in the current system? Consideration must also be given to the national registration body of the country. For example, in the case of Barbados, we have the Paramedical Professions Council, which comes under the Ministry of Health. Does that council hold the national responsibility to oversee that psychologists are conducting their business responsibly and ethically? Does the educational institution carry the responsibility of ensuring that supervisors are trained in clinical supervision and evaluate their competency and provide training to strengthen any weaknesses found? Again, what happens if the clinical supervisors choose to enact their jobs inadequately due to time constraints, the number of students they supervise, or their philosophy as to what constitutes clinical supervision? As we stand at these crossroads, let's look at what's on the horizon for education and training in professional psychology in the region. There's a need for a critical mass of experienced psychologists trained in clinical supervision. Psychologists should be incentivized to provide supervision to postgraduate students in practicum. Such incentivization can be offered in the form of credits through continuing education courses, upgrading of individuals, qualifications, or remuneration for those trained in clinical supervision. Building a cadre of experienced Caribbean psychologists who are trained to provide supervision is essential to the development of our profession. However, to practice legally as a psychologist in much of the English-speaking Caribbean requires being qualified to the master's degree level. I find that this requirement stymies the motivation for many to pursue a PhD program that provides professional training in psychology. Because PhD programs are not currently available in the region, and students would have to study overseas to pursue a PhD, which is a costly and for many not a financially viable option, not to mention in the current times where travel restrictions are also a contributing factor. So I am proposing that the route to attaining higher qualifications and achieving the goal of increasing the pool of trained clinical supervisors would be to develop what I like to call a research advancing intensive supervision education doctoral program, otherwise referred to as RAISE, similar to the concept of a top-up PhD in the UK. However, a RAISE PhD program would provide a route for master's trained psychologists registered to practice to convert their existing qualification into a doctorate through developing advanced research methods and clinical supervision skills. In my view, this is an ideal way to advance psychological practice and research in the region. The RAISE PhD program would comprise of 2 years of part-time study for registered professional psychologists with a minimum of 6 years of continuous work experience in the Caribbean. Such programs would provide education and training in clinical supervision, further development and assessment of research skills, and culminate in the completion of a dissertation, which will serve to boost research in clinical practice and hasten governments to work towards upgrading professional psychologists in the Caribbean to the doctoral level as the requirement for registration to practice. Hence, I recommend that the way forward is for us to, first of all, create a pool of clinical supervisors by offering training opportunities in clinical supervision. And this process would ideally begin with an audit of all registered practicing psychologists in the region, then work with Caribbean tertiary institutions to provide, in the initial phase, training in clinical supervision, and award postgraduate diplomas, which can be credentialed to go towards the taught credits of a RAISE PhD program. We could gain commitment from all who complete the training in clinical supervision to serve as supervisors, again, for a minimum of 6 years, with annual continuing professional development training opportunities provided. We could build the cost of clinical supervision into the overall cost of the postgraduate programs And we could promote the use of journaling and evaluations of clinical supervision and practicum experiences for both the supervisors and the students to feed research in the Caribbean. I hope that these ideas from my upcoming work provide food for thought as to how together we can raise the standards of education and training of psychologists in the Caribbean. And you can see I have a diagram here, organizing framework, I like to refer to it as, of how this could work. So at present, if I'm using Barbados as an example, we have our national registration body, the Paramedical Professions Council. So all psychologists that are registered with this body, we could invite, and once they have been working continuously for 6 years, they have a minimum of 6 years experience post-graduation, we could invite them to pursue the postgraduate diploma in clinical supervision, at which point they could work and provide clinical supervision for our postgraduate students. And then another option for those who are interested, they could go on to the RAISE PhD program, where they'd be able to also hone their research skills, carrying the credits from the postgraduate diploma through to their program, complete the PhD, acquire their doctorate, contribute to the pool of Caribbean psychological research, which in turn will help feed back into not only the clinical supervision, but also to the program itself, to the postgraduate diploma, as well as to the other psychologists that are out there practicing in the field. And I would like to say thank you. Thank you for listening to me. There are my references. I will take any questions. I'm just going to flick on my light because I realized that it's got dark all of a sudden. Sorry about that.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That was absolutely amazing, Dr. Maynard, and it raises so many thoughts and so many questions and answers some of the ones that I know that we have about how to really bring not only great supervision to the Caribbean, but also raise the opportunity for people to gain their doctorate right here. So I know we had the opportunity to put a few questions into the chat. And I'm not seeing any
We do
right
have
this
hand
minute.
raising. We do have a one hand raised. So I don't know if you can see
Okay.
the hand raising. I'll just pin the person so you
Yeah,
can.
maybe we
right
could
there.
also
There you
ask you to stop sharing your screen.
My apologies, there you are.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah. All right, Ritzia, Riza.
Good evening, everybody, again.
Good evening, welcome.
I apologize for being late this evening, but I did get to catch Dr. Maynard, your presentation. Oh yes, I'm Raisa Khan, sorry. I'm a counseling psychologist who resides in Guyana. I'm Guyanese. I actually was a graduate of the MSc Counseling Psychology K-Ville program just a short 2 odd years ago. And so I was happy to see that the program was mentioned. And since coming home, and even when I was in the program, I encouraged Guyanese to attend the program because, as I mentioned last night, we have only about 7 psychologists really in the whole of Guyana. And they vary from MA psychology, MSc clinical. Actually, there's no clinical psychologists in Guyana. And so many of us are just variations. So I was one of the only Guyanese in like the history I know of that did this program. So I've been encouraging a lot of young people in Guyana to do the program. So I just wanted to comment on that and also your pitfalls and so on. It really resonated with me because I was in internship for 11 months. Most of my classmates were 9 months. And like you mentioned, a lot of the Bayesians went into the school system and they had very different schedules from myself. I could easily work 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. at where I was, whereas some of my classmates finished at like 2 p.m. and because of school. And so they weren't things, I guess, to do after. And so hours were definitely a challenge. Supervision was obviously, like you mentioned, a major problem. You spoke about how to alleviate grievances and the potential for harm of students. And that also resonated with me because I personally felt affected by not having a proper supervisor that impacted my ability to be, I guess, a good psychologist in training. And that was due to them not being appropriately accredited. Like I was supervised majority of my internship by someone who had under 2 years of being a supervisor. And that greatly impacted my confidence and my ability at that point in time. So when you mentioned that, I was like, oh my God, that's my, like, that was my life for like 11 months. So I appreciate that UWE has acknowledged that harm to the interns is also a major thing that we need to mitigate for. And I do appreciate the new pathway for us, because I had to stay in Barbados because there was no one to supervise me here in Guyana. There's no doctorate level Guyanese psychologists here. If they are, they're not, I'm not sure if I trust them. Not sure how much of their PhD is psychological. There's a lot of people who have PhD in education, but might have their undergrad was in psychology or something, but that doesn't make them a PhD level psychologist, right? So those things are often happens in Guyana. And so I really appreciate now that we have, we're attending and participating in CanPA, because I really think like the standard in Guyana ethics, it really does come down to individual psychologists, because you mentioned who is watching to ensure that we are ethically doing the correct thing. And that really does come down to the individual psychologist, because in Guyana, we have no accreditation board. We have no real association where there's nothing attached to the government. And so these are a lot of the things that you spoke about, pitfalls, is our lived experience here in Guyana. And so I really look forward to hearing more about the postgraduate clinical supervision, just because in Guyana, because we don't have clinical psychologists, us as counseling psychologists, we have to take on a lot of things more clinical.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that lovely comment. You can respond one very quickly because we have to go on to our other speakers. Dr. Maynard?
I'll be very brief. Thank you very much, Reza. It is very nice to know that my research was on the right track. What I will tell you is I myself, I'm not in the Faculty of Social Sciences. I'm over in the School of Education, where we are now working on developing practitioner programs. We're looking at programs in, for instance, community and educational psychology and clinical child psychology. Those are the two that we're looking at the moment. But there is everything that you mentioned, you're correct, yes. You know, and it's nice that you were able to affirm that and see that in my presentation. Thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you. And I'm going to actually move us right along, and then please hold your comments or questions and put them into the chat. But right now we're going to introduce Dr. Mike Campbell, who will also be speaking specifically on supervision and virtual experiencing. Thank you, Dr. Campbell.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thanks, Dr. Dudley Grant. Pardon me for my slightly impaired voice, but I will do my best. I have something that is not COVID, but it is affecting my voice. So I have done some reading and thinking about telesupervision, which of course has become necessary in ways that I don't think we had anticipated, at least not the magnitude, until roughly 12 months ago. And it's interesting because there is some quite rapidly emerging literature that is mostly speculative at this point, but is building based on people's anecdotal experiences with these virtual supervision kind of scenarios. And so here's a very quick sort of bulleted summary of some benefits and challenges. Supervisees and supervisors both, I think, have benefited from flexibility of scheduling. And one of the things that was really interesting to me was this idea that several authors talked about, which is that having to think about engaging your supervisor or your supervisee virtually requires a certain amount of intentionality and rapport building, that you kind of have to think about it or at least that was their kind of phenomenological experience of it, that you had to think about establishing a supervisory relationship, especially if it's not somebody that you knew, non-virtually. And another interesting benefit was that remote supervision encourages consultation with other people besides your supervisor. And so depending on context, students may be encouraged, required to see.
All right, Mike, you went on mute, Mike, so yeah, accidentally.
Sorry. So as some of you probably know, APA and BPS, the American Psychological Association, the British Psychological Society, have both put out guidelines in the past year. And APA, interestingly, had previously said that no more than 50% of supervision should be virtual for APA accredited internship and postdoctoral programs. They've now said, well, because of COVID, a little more than 50 is fine. We'll let you make some appropriate accommodations. Be interesting to see, going forward post-COVID, whether, that guidance, the landscape of the guidance changes for the long term. The BPS guidelines, which are online and right here, there they are, I thought were more helpful. So I won't spend a lot of time on them, but what I would note to recommend them to you is that they have some very kind of specific practical tips to anticipate both for supervisors and supervisees, some of which are technical and some of which are more interpersonal process oriented. And I really found them useful. So in the context of all of that, lots of discussion in the literature and elsewhere about whether telesupervision will be the new normal, or at least a much greater component of routine supervision moving forward. That discussion has been taking place all over the world, but what I would like to emphasize to you all tonight is that I think that those developments are especially relevant in the geographic context of the Caribbean. Let me just make sure I'm in the right spot. So domestic telesupervision has been a COVID-related phenomenon, really all over the world, but supervision across countries in the Caribbean is an emerging reality and can address, I think, the development of telesupervision can address a number of practice realities in the region. So telesupervision can be helpful for limited availability of qualified and willing supervisors. By the way, my friendly amendment to Prof. Maynard's talk is that qualification is short, but willingness sometimes is even shorter when people are overwhelmed and multitasking. And so there has to be a structure that is both, where there's accountability for skills, but also some encouragement, right, for people to take on supervisees, usually for free. That is an issue. So telesupervision also helpful for specialized supervision or consultation in relatively small settings that many of us work in, finding specialists or researchers with particular areas of expertise, obviously is facilitated by virtual learning. And the third point I have here is that telesupervision can be helpful in accommodating challenges posed by dual relationships. And the smaller the country, the more likely that people may have multiple roles. And when those become areas of concern, it may be helpful to be able to connect with supervisors who are a little bit more removed, but still have competence and experience, in the Caribbean. So there are challenges. And these challenges are presented to regional governments and healthcare structures. And I think in particular that the CAMPA Professional Practice Standards Committee and really the Education and Training Committee can engage some of these challenges helpfully as governments and healthcare institutions think about the future of telepractice and telesupervision both. As we know, practice legislation is not uniform. In fact, it's not universally existent in the region. And there are a number of, well, a few important questions, let's just say here, there could be others. One is, should psychologists supervise students in areas where they're not registered or licensed? A related question is reciprocity of registration in the region a feasible thing to do? And if reciprocity isn't feasible, is a limited registration framework for the purposes of supervision a possibility? There are issues of varying scope of practice for psychologists in different areas of the region. And this is related also to the types of cases that are appropriate for virtual supervision. For example, handling crises, particularly potential hospitalizations, may require locally credentialed, licensed, registered people on the ground. And in some jurisdictions, psychologists actually don't play a role, and you need a physician, right? There are those kinds of areas, but the general point about thinking about the acuity of clients when you're structuring supervision or teletherapy relationships is really the main issue. All of this suggests that prior planning, developing thoughtful structures, and collaborating to provide local and international support for trainees is important and particularly needs attention in high stakes clinical environments. So just to close, I think that CAMPA, I really want to emphasize that I think CAMPA can play a key role in providing expert guidance for regional mechanisms of practice generally and supervision in particular. There are geopolitical issues. CARICOM, especially English-speaking CARICOM, probably has greater uniformity and legislative structure relative to some other parts of the community, but greater uniformity doesn't mean uniform. And Puerto Rico and USVI have probably more overlap than other areas, but they are not the same place either. And Cayman and Bermuda have some overlap, but they are also not the same. So really the closing point is that effective policy needs to take regional commonalities and local uniqueness into account, and needs to include practice legislation, practitioner training programs, and input and learning from both the supervisors and the students themselves. I think that's 5 minutes, maybe just a little more. Thanks very much.
That is excellent. I did time you. It's 8 minutes and 33 seconds.
Oh, Lord, sorry.
So
Those
that's
were-
very good, very good. You raise excellent points, and I would again see if there are any questions or comments before we go on to our third speaker. Yes, Mallory.
Harry. Yes,
Yes.
good evening, Dr.
Good evening.
Campbell. I am just wondering, in terms of, and this is in reference to Ms. Donna Marie's presentation, in the context of supervision, I am wondering in terms of, I know the Caribbean is a region and we share, and I'm saying we because I'm living abroad now, but I'm from Jamaica, hoping to return eventually to do some of my work there. So I'm wondering in terms of the cultural and the ethnic aspect, there are a lot of similarities between the islands or the countries. And I'm wondering where would in terms of the intersectionality come into play between, let's say, Barbados, Jamaica, Trinidad. Even though there are similarities, there are cultural differences. are those differences being highlighted in the proposal for training and supervision? Because the clientele would be different and their needs are going to be different. So the therapist in training has to be aware of the cultural similarities and differences in order to be effective. That's my question, my concern.
That is right on point. I think that is a very critical concern. So, it's not just a matter of kind of reciprocity and some mechanism for regional collaboration. There is a real concern about particularly in the case of supervision, where supervisors, supervising somebody in Jamaica who've never been to Jamaica and don't know, they know Barbados or they know St. Vincent. And so some things they may get right, others they don't. One of the things that as I was having some conversations with colleagues developing this that came up is the idea that really, even if there's sharing of supervision across the region, that supervision of supervision is important, and the ability to do peer consultation with colleagues who have more specific knowledge or more experience, and so I think those are things that can help, but I would, from my point of view, I think it is something that requires some ongoing kind of self-assessment and vigilance and being conscious of your own limitations and knowing when you're out on an edge where you need to seek, some input.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. I do not see any other questions or comments right now, so we will move right on to our Dr. Dara Hamilton, who will be sharing some of her thoughts on engaging people and the joys of practicing in the Caribbean. Dara.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right, and I will be watching the time. Let's see how I do. I think I've over-prepared here of material, but let's see. So I'm going to be talking on just a couple things. One, the psychology education with this online or versus on the ground and on the ground instruction, and also be looking at some of the challenges of educating people in the graduate programs in psychology, just based on the experience that I've had here at UVI. So I'm going to start with the challenges and rewards in online instruction. And I will say that those of us who came through traditional programs probably looked a little bit side-eye at online programs when they came through and really questioned their effectiveness and so forth. But we know that online programs are not new, and they appear to be quite effective. In fact, there was a 2014 study from MIT that found that their online program was actually more effective than the on-the-ground program that they used for the study specifically. So we know that online programs are effective and online teaching can be very effective. The issue that we're facing right now is that we have been thrust into online. Those of us who were teaching traditionally on the ground have now been thrust into online teaching. So that creates challenges for us, but there probably weren't challenges for people who have been used to teaching in that way. So we're going to look at some of those challenges that we're facing now because it hasn't been our traditional way of providing instruction. And then I'll look at what our challenges are and benefits are in psychology education in the Caribbean in general. So one of the biggest issues with online instruction has been the loss of interpersonal social contact and individual face-to-face contact with students. And the students benefit from this. They want it. They say that they would prefer to have face-to-face classes, and being online limits this interaction, sometimes significantly, depending on how focused someone is on making sure they have this type of contact. There's also this reduced participation that a lot of us have been facing with our students who are now online. because they don't have the demand of having to respond to you when you ask a question and they have their cameras off half the time and are muted. And so there's no demand of you being in the room, which also limits that interaction and engagement and really affects, as far as I can see, the student motivation to participate in class and sometimes even attend class because they sign in and they check out. I also look at the idea that this also provides less structure for our younger or more immature students, the online instruction, and they seem to want that structure that says you have to come to class, you have to see me, and so they lose out on seeing their professors and again that demand of being there face to face. So one of the other challenges for us who are moving from face to face or on the ground to online instruction has also been ensuring that we are adequately covering the material. So what I've found is we tend to overdo it, and I'll say that I overdo it. And I look at the Blackboard or I look at their platform and they've got so many assignments, and I say, oh my God, did I really assign you guys all this work, even though we're meeting virtually twice a week as well, or 3 times a week as well. So moving from a place where we felt like we had a handle on the amount of work that they needed to do to cover the material now becomes, I'm not quite sure as to how many assignments or the depth of the assignments. Also, designing interactive courses and meaningful assessments is always a challenge with online or virtual instruction. I'm going to stop sharing for just 1 second. Some of the publishers have these wonderful test banks and so forth. And I'll tell you, my dad died last year and I was like, I'm going to go to these test banks because I cannot create an assessment for this class right now. It was my first time teaching it. And then I looked back and every one of the questions was online. They could have just searched them and found all the answers. And I said, oh my God, but these test banks are supposed to be protected. And so the idea is that now we have the challenge of creating creating assessments for these courses that are meaningful and you can't just kind of search and find the answers to, right? So those can be challenging as well as doing the interactions. Larger class sizes also mean make more meaningful assessments more burdensome for instructors. And so when you do a really good assessment, like a great discussion board that has all these elements and this rubric and so forth, then it means you have to read it also. So for us who've now gone to online instruction and you're making this wonderful, great assignment, if you've got a large class, it becomes a burden for the instructor, but then there are a few other options in terms of creating meaningful assessments that people can't just kind of copy and paste or search and paste. I feel like I'm already running out of time here. Loss of opportunity for socialization amongst peers is a big one, I think, for our students. The classroom is a great place for them to meet their husband or their wife, or, to meet their study group, or to just make friends and so forth. And they lose that when they're in online instruction because of the amount of distance that you have. There's no real natural way to facilitate that when you're online. So those are some of the challenges I've found with online and virtual instruction as well when we're doing Zoom, synchronous Zoom. But here are some of the benefits. The courses are more accessible to a wider range of students. And so it's interesting because they complain all the time about having to take online classes when we weren't in COVID, and they still say we don't like it. But if you do an online class and a face-to-face class, they all register for the online classes. And it's really very confusing. Like you just said, you guys don't like online classes, you prefer face-to-face classes, but when we offer the online classes, those are the ones that fill up. And so it's definitely a benefit to our students because the courses are more accessible to a wider variety of students. They can manage their own work and study schedules. And, for me, once the courses are developed, there may be more time available for us to do other things once your course is really developed and you deploy it and you're able to just get on, send your announcements, check the work, respond to students and grade and so forth. It's like, oh yeah, I don't have to really spend a lot of time trying to construct this course. However, as my mom says, nature abhors a vacuum. we know other things fill that spot, and we still end up as busy as we ever were. But in theory, perhaps it will free up some time. So it's possible to access the coursework from many places. So this is good for our students. Some are joining when they're at work, some are joining on their lunch hours, some are joining in a variety of situations. And so that it, again, increases their access. And it requires a closer examination of teaching practices in order for us to really create a course online that is effective and beneficial and useful and meaningful and so forth. Then you really have to pay attention. We cannot just take what we were doing on the ground and just put it back, put it online. I think that that's what happened to a lot of us. And I'm going to raise my hand and say me too. That you know, it's like, okay, let's just put this online and here we go. But it really does require some different thinking and different skills and different strategies. And so that has definitely been a challenge. So I'm going to wrap it up because I know I'm running out of time here. And one of the final benefits, I'm gonna, oh great. So one of the final benefits, and then I'm gonna just jump to the close, is that students have increased responsibility for their learning, which is something that happens with online instruction. They cannot be passive students who sit in the classroom and just hear you chat and talk and talk and talk for a while and then go home and check out. But when it's online, they really have to engage with the material themselves and have to take more responsibility. That works for some students and it doesn't work for others. So in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and skip down to some of my closing remarks here. And if anyone has questions about just psychology instruction in general, then I'll take those after. But I wanted to close with the idea that, of course, we adapt. We have to adapt. And it's not Charles Darwin, it's not the strongest of the species that survived, nor the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change. And that is us, in terms of moving from that face-to-face, the thing that we're comfortable with, to what we need to be doing at the time. And then, of course, Nelson Mandela, we may not always, you know, get things 100% all the time, but as long as we get back up, right? The greatest glory in living lies not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. And then, of course, Muhammad Ali says the same thing. It's the staying down that's wrong. So the idea is that we just keep trying, we keep working, we keep adapting, and we will, you know, be as successful in our instruction. So yeah, that's my conclusion. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Hamilton. Stay unmuted, please.
Sure.
Because I think that your presentation was absolutely phenomenal and brings to mind many of my students who are on this call too. And I wonder if you can speak to if you think there's anything about particularly this kind of virtual learning in the Caribbean and what uniqueness might be experienced, you know, from teaching in the Caribbean and from students.
You know, and this is me off the top, just looking at the fact that we appreciate closer relationships, that we're used to being able to be social with each other. We're more intimate environments, and we depend on those relationships to some degree. And so without those relationships, I think it's a bit harder. You know, sorry, students who are on the call, I'm like, yes, when we don't have to have class, because it can be kind of rough. But, you know, they're like, we want class. So, you know, even my online class that I have this semester, they want to meet. And it's like, they're okay. Thank you, Catherine. They're okay with meeting on Fridays at 6 o'clock. They are okay with that. And I'm like, how can you be okay with meeting on Fridays at 6 o'clock? That just is unbelievable. They're like, oh, I'll be there. I'm like, okay, so Monday's a holiday. Oh yeah, let's do that. And it's just like, what are you talking about? So I think that that's something that we really, that connection, that personal connection that we really, it's important to us. And our students say that. Even if they sign up for online classes, they're still saying, I need to see you. I need to connect with you. And I think that that's one of the issues.
Absolutely. I want to say that has been astonishing to me in working with the students now, is how they really show up, and they just keep showing up. And, you know, it's but I had not looked at it in the context of the culture itself. So that's a really good and I think important point too, that desire for connection.
Can I make one more point before I jump off, Dr. Grant? Because I feel like this is significant for everyone on the line because we are in psychology and also related, fields. I've had over the past week or so, 4 students who've said, I am overwhelmed. The one who told me that today was actually near tears. And we did a quick relaxation exercise before everyone else joined the call. And, I tried to give her some tips really fast before everyone jumped on. But they have said, I am so overwhelmed. We've had to refer a couple of them for therapy and so forth because of COVID. And so that's one of the things that I just would like to mention as we're doing online instruction. It's just so much harder to check in with our students, and they're under a lot of stress as well as we are. And so I just want to put that idea out to everyone. Just, I don't know what your experiences are, but I've had quite a few students who are just, they've had it. They've had it. And so that's one of the adaptations that I feel like I have to make, is talking with them about where they are and their assignments if they're not coming in and so forth.
So I know we do have 2 hands raising. So Miss Rose is first, and then followed by Dr. Mena as well. But before you go there, yes.
So you commented and said that, students don't like the virtual learning, they prefer to be in class, but when you offer virtual classes, they're the ones that fill up first. So as a recent undergraduate and a very young 20-something, I want to say that I think the reason that happens is because you go in person because you want to learn. You go in person because you actually really want to be in that class. But before virtual learning was the norm, virtual classes were kind of seen as, like, for lack of better terms, a loaf class. Those were the classes where you could just look things up online, and you didn't have to try as hard. You didn't have to go. So I think that was probably why at the before virtual classes were pretty much all we could do. That so many students would sign up for those classes because they were like, well, it's an easy A, and then also you talked about professors, teachers being overwhelmed and students being overwhelmed. I know that in the middle, as the pandemic started, we went online, and this was my second to last semester, and it was horrible. It was terrible. Not only was I in isolation because of the mandatory shutdown in the States, I wasn't even home. All my friends went home because for spring break I decided to stay in the States. They came back on island for spring break. They ended up having to stay. I ended up having to stay over there. I was alone and isolated, and now everything was online. So it's like your schoolwork also becomes homework, so it's like you feel like you're doing homework all day long. You're just stuck at this computer all day, and it gets overwhelming for the teachers and the students, because my mom, she's a teacher. She posts work all day, she's in class all day, and then it hits her that now I have to correct these 600 and something papers that I just posted. So like your presentation just resonated so deeply with me, because I didn't do online classes at all in any way, shape, or form before COVID, and I absolutely despised it.
Thank you, excellent. And Donna Maria, it looks like you have.
Second, I didn't know if Dara had something to say.
Sorry.
No, I was just saying thank you so much, because I really appreciate that, Izani, your feedback regarding why students may take the online courses first, and still that they may still have that experience of, I don't like it, but I'm gonna do it because I think it might be easier. Yes, so I really appreciate both your points, and you're so correct. That idea of, and I can relate to your mom in terms of, okay, I've given all this work, and now I've got more work. So the more work I give, the more work I get. And so how do I balance this for myself and for the students? So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, absolutely. Donna Maria?
I just wanted to say that I endorse everything that you said, Dara, especially as it relates to when we first went online and the overcompensating that I thought I had to do. And you're quite right, the more projects and assignments that you put out there, the more that you have to mark. So that was definitely my experience. With respect to culture, I find, the Caribbean is a very storytelling culture. And I think that that's what's missing now that we've gone to the online, especially with the synchronous communication. I find that compared to the classroom experience, it's not the same. I don't get the chance or the opportunity to provide as many examples from my own experience and so forth as I do in the classroom. And I also think that online, you have to be very focused all the time. It's exhausting. After, a class, I feel physically tired from, why I don't experience that in the face-to-face classroom. So it's definitely a completely different experience. And the last thing I want to say is about, in terms of providing supervision online, I work with a group of school counselors, and we've been running a group for a few weeks now online. And some of the things that Dr. Campbell mentioned as well have gone on in this group. And it's very, very challenging to not be able, for me anyway, not to be able to reach out and whether it's touch someone and comfort them, you can see that they're having a difficult time, or just, I find it very challenging. It's difficult. And I think, that's a ripe area again for research in terms of, especially within our Caribbean culture, where, as you said, we're social beings. We're very, tactile and used to being, close to each other. So thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, and thank you for your comments. I really, really appreciate what you said about the storytelling, because you're so correct. I mean, that's mostly what I do is tell stories in the class, right? And oh, this is when I had this person, and oh, I have a friend who's got this, and so it really makes a big difference in terms of helping them connect with the material. I believe it makes a difference with that, and so thank you very, very much for your comments.
Excellent. All right, so I think at this point, I have noticed that Raisa Khan has also talked about students who are stressed, and I know parents and minors, and so those are definitely issues and concerns that we're hoping going to be able to discuss more thoroughly in your breakout groups. So now we're going to put you into your groups, and we'll give you 20 minutes to discuss these or any other concerns and thoughts that you may have. And you'll be getting a 2-minute or a 3-minute warning before you come back in for our final discussion. So I'll turn it over to our Zoom maven, Dr. Nicholas, who will put us into our groups.
Thank you so much. So this is really like the fun part, because you get a chance with a smaller group to have conversations about some of the things you've heard, share resources, get a chance to connect with one another. As Dr. Gwen indicated, I know that Dr. Hamilton, you have to leave us early. And so I wanted to make sure that you get a chance to say your proper, just in case when we come back from the breakout room that you're not here with us. If you wanted to say your final words before.
Sure, I'll go ahead and stay. Part of the reason why I had to get off was because my son is hungry, but he did mention about an hour ago, do we have any food? And I said no, and he hasn't bothered me again. And so I may be able to make it to 7:30. So I'll say, but if I don't come back together, thank you guys so much for having me. This was such an amazing experience. And, of course, I appreciate your faith, Gerda and Dr. Grant and all the other organizers who said, yes, we'll choose her. So I really appreciate that.
Really awesome to have you guys. Thank you so much, Dad. Thank you so much. I'm going to open up the rooms now. You're going to get a message that tells you a room. So you just have to click on it. And remember, you don't have a moderator. So yes, you're it. Yes. I see that, Diana. I don't know, Diona, are you with us? And Polly, good to see you, Polly, as always. So good to see you.
Diana, are you there?
I don't know if you can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes the internet might not be great, but
Yeah, I'll text her.
Yeah, Dion, okay.
Yeah,
Let her know that the time for the small
yeah,
group.
yeah.
Mhm.
Excellent.
Um, there she goes.
Oh, okay,
Mhm.
good, done. Yay,
I thought probably, okay.
okay.
Hi, Polly, are you with us?
Uh-huh.
I was trying to see whether or not yesterday, whether or not we should stop the recording and re-record again, but then I think we'll end up with two separate recordings. So I'm
Oh,
just gonna
okay,
keep this recording on so that we don't
okay.
end up with, and then we might just need somebody like a media group to just edit the middle part when they go
Oh,
into the,
yeah,
so that way they, it's like seamless, I
yes.
think there are those who are doing that kind of editing before we send it out to everybody.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, so
Ah, oh, Polly is gone, I guess.
I
Maybe
think
she went to a
I
group.
think she joined her group. She may have
Oh,
just clicked on the group, yeah, because she was
and-
assigned to a group.
oh, okay. And what
Yeah.
happened to Kai?
Kai was assigned to a group.
Oh, cool.
The only way last time she said she wasn't gonna go because she had some other stuff to do. So
Okay.
she just declined. You can decline joining a group. So
Oh, okay,
yeah.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, you are doing an awesome job, madame, as always, as always.
You too. Awesome, awesome. It's really
Yeah.
amazing to hear. Trying to send some of these pictures on. I try. So you can pick up the one for Dara and you can send it directly to her. I don't
Oh,
have her on
thank you.
WhatsApp. So that way,
Okay.
sometimes, I send Mike's to him and I send Donna Maria hers
Oh,
already. So that
okay.
people like to see what they've done.
Yes, yes.
Sort of like our gifts to them.
You know, it's sad. My little ego is just so paining me. I'm looking and I'm saying, "Oh my God, you are so ugly."
You. Oh my God, beautiful
Oh,
you. Look at
no,
you. Oh my
no.
God.
And the way my
Get it out,
face
get
is
it out.
like,
No. No way. You are not talking about my friend like that. So you look to the other side and says, no, you are not talking about my friend. Not
okay.
this one, okay? So let that other thought go and say, go away,
Go
okay?
away. All right. Oh my God.
Go
So
away.
how did I got the one for Dara. Oh my God. I
There's a
look
bunch of others. It just says like if you click on
okay.
all of them, you can just select.
Yes, yes, yes.
Are
I
you on
got it.
the camper one or are you in this
I'm on the
LOCC one?
Gerda one that you sent directly to me.
No, I sent them to the LOC.
Oh,
The
you did?
LOC.
Okay. What am I on? Yeah, I'm on the LOC.
Okay,
Right.
yeah,
So the
yeah.
+8. Yes, I got, okay.
You see
So I'll
them?
send that.
There's some that are just uniquely hers. You know what I mean? Like the one
Yeah,
that
that's what I was trying to find, is the ones with
you have to,
just
you have to click
her.
all of them and where it says select on top on WhatsApp,
Yes.
and then you just
Um,
click select. Yeah.
okay. So, select.
You see it?
Of
Exactly.
course. Now I see it. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And then you can just like pick the one
Then
that
I can choose the ones.
yeah.
Yes. Oh, thank you. I'm telling you, this thing. Wow. Oh my goodness. All right.
Everything is a learning.
Yes, my dear.
So much to learn, so much to learn. That's all.
Mm,
Uh,
absolutely. How are my darlings? I look at their pictures sometimes.
they are great. They're great. So Lex is graduating,
Oh
so
my God in heaven.
it looks like she's gonna be heading to University of Maryland. That's where she wants to
Woohoo!
go.
Excellent.
So and then Tati's graduating in May. She graduates in May from NYU. Yeah.
Wow. What is
Amazing.
Tati going to do?
She really wants to do she really wants to do something small, like she wants to work for a smaller firm instead of like big Google that's trying to,
Oh.
you know,
Yes,
yeah,
yes, yes. Okay.
so she's like, so something like that that's not gonna take her like away from being able to help, you know,
Yes.
like not for profit and stuff. So
Ah, oh. Is she gonna come back? Well,
oh no, no,
no.
oh no, she is not coming back of New York. Yeah.
Mm.
You know, so
She's staying in New York.
oh yeah.
Oh my God. You know, when I first saw what city girls they were, when they were so comfortable when we were in Paris.
Uh-huh.
Oh my God. I'm freaking out, looking around every corner. They're like, oh, we got this. Come on, Auntie.
They're like, come on,
Yes,
you know?
go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, we got this. Get on the subway,
Mhm.
go to the park.
Mhm.
Oh my God.
It's amazing, you know?
Yes, it certainly is.
Hmm.
Ah, it is. Ah, okay, I sent it to we have a little work crew group too, so that's good.
Yeah, oh, that's nice.
Yes, yes, excellent. So I think the next I was talking a little bit with Cass
Hmm.
about her concern right now. She says, Rita, we got to get more money. I said, I'm realizing that because of the technology, because I know technology is not cheap.
Yeah, but why can't we reduce the price of I mean, we should be reducing the cost of what it's gonna cost us in the on-site one. Let me say, we're not
ah,
gonna have the food thing. We're not gonna have the food costs because we're not gonna have food for so many people.
but trust
But
me, I did do that. I cut it.
hi, sorry, 1 second.
Hello, how are you?
Hi, how you doing? Thanks for joining us. Sorry, you're not on mute. Sorry.
Unmute,
Yeah,
unmute, unmute.
Hi, I had to change computers so my microphone and the other one wasn't working. So can you put me back into the chat room?
absolutely. Do you remember which room? Let me go see which room you were in.
Michelle.
You're one with, okay, let's see, Michelle. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, I don't see you listed. Do you remember where you were in with who? When people introduce themselves?
Is it Michelle?
You were in with Michelle?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. So I'm gonna move you to room 1. Okay. Awesome.
Thanks.
Okay.
You're welcome. Yeah, I did. I shaved off at least about 70,000 because I did things like, the community forum. I'm gonna do it just all online. Instead, it doesn't
Yeah.
make sense to bus people into the center of the island and blah, blah, blah. And we're doing so many community forums online now. We get 70, 80 people. So, there's no reason why we can't do that and cut all the cost out, the food, the
That's good.
yes. So that's the Wednesday night. I think we're going to have the on site for the governor, because it's his
Yeah,
campaign
definitely.
year. He needs those pictures and all of that stuff. So I'm trying to, yes, and I'm even thinking that the transportation will be a lot cheaper because we're not going to have all of those different hotels. I
No,
mean,
exactly.
the major concern that I have is whether, well, the hotel is going to be ready, but I hope that because we're not taking up the entire hotel, they're not going to try to raise the price. But,
Yeah, I think that's gonna be where we should, like, because you're not gonna have a lot of that food. We don't need that space. We don't need
yeah,
you know what I mean? So
right. And what do
yeah,
you think we should do? This has been plaguing me about the cultural night.
I think we should still have a cultural night. It will just still be a local, You know what I
Local,
mean? This is
yeah.
still invite some of the people on. It might be, you know, it might be smaller. We can still broadcast it live so people can
Oh,
still see it.
yes,
You know
yes,
what's
nice.
happening in terms of the cultural night
Yes,
as well, and invite other people to come and, you
yes,
know,
yes,
and
yes.
join us when they're on guard, you know,
Yes. And
as
we
well
had
as
already, yeah, I mean, we definitely, there's a couple, we call them quadrille dancers. They're like bambula dancers, you know, we have to have that. We have to have our moko jumbis. That's my thing.
course.
And, you know, so we have a few that are accustomed to performing out there anyway. And
That's
so, you
good.
know, yeah, if we get, and I like the idea of broadcasting it too, because that
Yeah,
keeps everybody else still engaged for sure.
I think that would be great, you know,
Yeah.
and people can still dress up, you know,
Yes,
as
yes.
well. So, you know,
So tell me, who do you think is going to be, should be the next Gerda?
oh man, man.
Do you want to, you don't want to be president? No, you never want to be president. I know.
Mm,
That is so, you're amazing that way. Good. But
mm-mm.
the Sec Gen, I'm not sure who, have you
Yeah.
thought about that?
No, I mean, I've been really trying to think. I mean, somebody who really knows. I thought maybe Ava might be interested in coming back and serving in that role, you know.
Oh,
And
did you
then
speak to her?
I didn't, not yet,
Okay,
you
I'll
know.
let you
But
do
then,
that.
you know, having somebody else come in, because we do need somebody who can really
Mhm.
like it's every inch of this thing you have to be in it, you
Yes,
know.
yes.
So you have to know like what each of the committees, you know, are doing. You have to follow up with people. You have to,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know, make sure our president is like, you know, like getting it all, like it's just
Yes,
it's a lot, and that files are up to date and things like that. So, and at the
right.
same time making sure that we're also having like a a presence, you know, like an international and national presence also within
Yeah,
the region, you know. So
yeah,
so you have to have somebody who can know a little bit about some of that. So that's why I
yeah.
thought maybe like as another couple years for somebody else like Ava coming in and serving, because I know she's super busy, might
Mhm.
be really great. I don't know, you know.
Mhm. Yeah. I think that would be awesome if she would do that, because I think we're at a critical crossroads, really. You know,
Yeah.
when she's got all of the things going now with Sedima and Paho
Yeah.
and this, you know, and I think that's definitely and we need to make sure that that the CRCPs continue. Do you think that Cuba might be ready to host it
Oh
now
no.
that
Oh no.
no, no,
Oh no.
that's not okay. Don't even think about it.
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
So,
I mean, I think that if we could have, I mean, we're just really trying to see if we can get Yamilka up
mhm,
and going and that kind of stuff. I think we
mhm,
need, I mean, it would be awesome, right? It would be awesome if they were, but we don't have the underground committee.
yeah,
That's what
yeah,
we don't have enough. I mean, I speak a lot with Alberto Cobian and
uh-huh.
stuff, and but he was running for some other offices, and I don't know if
Oh,
he got those, you know. Um,
okay.
you know what I mean? So so I
Whew,
think that, yeah, no, you know, if
uh-huh.
if we could get him on and he could
Yes.
put together a team, maybe we might have a better shot in Santiago de Cuba, not even Havana, but Santiago
Mm-hmm.
de Cuba,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
something. So
Mm.
but
Well, where do we have as a real possibility for Spanish, you know, I mean, it's between Puerto Rico and Santo Domingo, and Puerto Rico could do it, but for some reason they don't seem motivated.
yeah, because they're all about trying to get their own stuff up and running, their own
Mm-hmm.
association again, and you know,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't think we're gonna get them. Yeah.
No, and Santo Domingo, I don't know. I mean,
Oh, that's a lost cause. Like I mean, yeah, you know, we cannot get this group, yeah,
no,
motivated. Um,
no.
in part because they changed leadership so much, so they have actually no idea. So that whole trip that Guillermo and everybody just did to connect with all of them,
Mhm.
you know, they have a whole new brand new leadership again. So how do you, what's the mechanism to continue to engage them in such a way?
Yeah,
You
that
know,
makes
so
absolutely no sense. Well, I don't know. Everybody has their own structure. So I can't say, that's what they do. But I think if anything, what we probably need to request all of our organizations to do is to identify. I know we may have done it in principle, but we definitely need to identify a liaison, a CanPA liaison in every organization.
mhm,
Yeah,
yeah,
okay. Yeah, we definitely, because that would help too. I'm making the final push to get, as you saw, to get the dues out to everyone. And Ava has sent me, or sending me, she still wants it to be done by not mail, I guess. What did we use? We used when we got it, not UPS, but when we
FedEx,
used it,
FedEx,
FedEx, yeah. Um, so that's what we're going to do now, and we're still going to put it into the Bahamas. But I want to believe that this year we're going to figure this out, because I'm not walking, my term ends and I want to hand off something that is very functional in the
mhm,
way of working with each of our member nations, because that's a critical piece of this whole thing. Although Canva is a little miracle. It really is. It's a
isn't it? It's
miracle.
true. It is absolutely true. And I think the power of this, man, it's just unbelievable. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, so one of the things I'm trying to make sure we have is a good relationship with CSA as well,
Ah,
to see
ah,
how do we have a presence at CSA, because that's where we launch, if you recall, in Grenada, right?
that's
So
true.
uh,
Absolutely.
we should always be at CSA presenting something on Campa, because that's a huge conference and
Yes,
they're
it is.
everywhere. And this year they're going to be in Guyana, although they just decided to go virtual.
Ah, okay.
And because they're going to be there in the fall. So I'm trying to connect with them to see if we can get on their platform, and have like an official kind of MOU like with them, as we are trying to do with these other entities. So we
Okay.
can put that in place.
Ah, that's a great idea.
And then definitely want to have something signed with APA. Remember we
Ah,
talked about that
yes,
MOU with APA. We have not done that, so I
that
really
is
want to
true.
make sure that I connect with Amanda to get that in place as well, because that means that in terms of publicizing our conferences and
Uh-huh.
another thing that would be important.
Okay.
Um, so these guys have 2 minutes. Let me send them a broadcast.
All right.
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
1 minute. Have 1 minute actually.
Oh, I'm interested in knowing how influence Campa have on policy making across the Caribbean to bring about changes to education and training. Let's make sure that we bring that question to the presenters. Yeah, that's great.
Mhm.
Very good. Yeah, I think having the MOUs, that also, definitely continues our march towards being, towards life. I
Mhm.
mean, we're with 2011. This is our 10th year. This
Yes.
is our 10th year.
Mhm.
Wow,
Yeah.
that
So
is,
we really need to have like that's one of the things I've been really trying to think about. Like for the conference itself, we should
uh-huh.
really have this sort of 10-year banners. We should really
Oh,
be,
yes.
and
Love it.
yeah, and
Love it. Love it.
yeah,
Yes, yes. Absolutely.
mhm,
Great, great, great. We shall do that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I was thinking about, I'm trying to think about some kind of materials that we can put together regarding, I was trying to see if we can create like a video of our 10 years, so that way it's like 8 every
Ooh,
year.
yes, yes,
Like what is it Campa has,
yes. Where
Yeah,
have we been? Clips from
yeah,
each of the conferences and our meetings.
yeah.
We've had a lot of off camera, or
Mhm.
not off camera, but off conference meetings that have been really amazing
Yeah.
as well. Yep, for sure.
Yeah. So so I'll see. Hopefully maybe I'll try to get it, see if I can pull something together between now and our next meeting, because I've been trying to pull together a presentation deck of just 10, Campa within 10 years, over the 10 years.
Ah,
I think,
nice.
I was glad that we got our stuff on the website. Here they go.
Yeah, all right.
Okay, now good job, Ikai, for paying
Nice.
attention.
Welcome back. Welcome back.
Good
Yeah,
job.
I had to, I said, guys, we're done. Bye.
So there we go.
Ooh,
50
here we
seconds,
go.
48. Yes, you guys are listening today. It must be Friday. It must be Friday. So
Excellent.
yeah,
Welcome back. Welcome back.
welcome back, everyone.
Mhm.
The other ones don't worry, they'll be coming too. They have 28 seconds. So, and then they get exported, it's awful. It's in the middle of a conversation, and then
Oh my God.
it starts like 14 seconds, 13 seconds.
All right.
Yes.
Excellent.
Wonderful, wonderful. 2 more seconds.
Hi,
Yes.
Paulette. I see you.
Yes.
Hi, Kai.
Oh, wonderful. Dara's here.
There is still with us.
Hey, I've almost made it.
Yay.
Oh, great,
Awesome,
great.
awesome.
But
Well,
you
welcome
tell
back
Khalil
to-
we said thank you to him.
I'm gonna make it up to him, I tell you.
Yes, you are. We're gonna make sure of it.
just pinning our
Oh,
speakers so that they can be there.
wonderful.
But this is a great opportunity for us to hear how was your breakout room. Love to hear, because we didn't get a chance to go, so we'd love to hear your
Yes.
thoughts about the key takeaways from the breakout room that anybody wants to share. Any also
Mm.
last comments and perspective as well. Love to hear them.
Go right ahead, unmute yourselves and just jump in.
Mhm. You guys,
Everyone's so quiet, and that's
I
one of the
know.
things we talked about in our breakout room.
you guys are gonna keep it all to yourselves, huh? You're
I
gonna keep it all
know,
to
they're not
yourselves.
sharing.
Well, we talked about the stresses and the pressures of online education from both standpoints. What else did we talk about, guys? Help me out.
We kind of discussed how not only how stressful and just rigorous it is, because you are now forced to do everything at home, and then we kind of talked about how teachers would usually give you activities in class. You can no longer necessarily do those activities. You now have to do them at home on top of your homework, but also that how students went from this very structured learning center. You go to a classroom, you're kind of forced, again, I said this earlier, I use that term very lightly. You're forced to sit down, and you're forced to listen to the teacher, professor, whoever it may be. And now you're at home where I and everyone younger than me and slightly older than me, we're all digital natives. And so we very much know technology. And we know that if I open another tab, you guys can't see that. I can be playing video games and y'all will never know. You know what I mean? So it's you get this kind of freedom that kids never were able to experience before. And so of course, discipline builds from that. But before that, they're going to have many children are going to learn that, wow, I really didn't have any discipline. And now I'm tempted by all these outside factors and all these like distractions. So yeah, we talked about that and how like our A students drop to like C students like that because of online learning and not being used to it, not being prepared.
True.
And for me, it's sort of a reverse. What I'm seeing now is the kids that were quite destructive in class and wanted that one-to-one attention, needed that special time with a teacher. They are surviving on the internet because their craving are being met. On the opposite is the expectations of parents and teachers. We still expect them to behave the same, learn the same, whereas it's quite a different environment. And it's about that expectations. And I think rather than putting it on the kids to learn and to think that everybody have a different learning style, it's figuring out what is working for whom and what type of way and how innovative we can be to make it interesting.
Yeah, we also talked about the accessibility issue with technology. And I gave the example that my mom, she's a first grade teacher, and 9 out of her 15 students had no type of technology. They weren't able to log into class at all. Now, these are first graders that are at the most pivotal moment in their education, not getting any because they just don't have laptops, iPads, or anything.
I think I really appreciate the comments, and I appreciate the conversations that you guys have had. And this is a really great opportunity because this is what COVID has allowed us to be able to really write, as there's a number of challenges with COVID in terms of just the sheer depth and ways that we've all been impacted socially in so many different ways. It's also providing the opportunity to say, what are the best practice models? How do we think about virtual teaching? How do we think about, providing treatment, as we were talking about yesterday, in terms of being able to provide treatment? And one of the things that we mentioned yesterday was how people are seeing much more treatment adherence, better treatment adherence now, better attendance for treatment, in part because it doesn't have the same ability to get to the therapist's office, right? In the same way, and they certainly seeing it that it's useful for youth and adolescents because they don't have to rely on their parents taking them, for the services as well. So we're seeing a higher rate and level in terms of that, which is really all great. And it's a great opportunity for us to begin to say, are there some things as an associations, right, as an alliance of associations, as individual associations, are there some things that we're learning on how to actually put some things in place that could actually continue to address some of these disparities that may have existed that we were not paying attention to in any significant way? And it sounds like virtual training is one, virtual supervision is the other, as well as for us to think about. So Donna, I see your hands up, sorry.
Sorry, Gerda, I was going to play devil's advocate, and I was going to say, are we seeing more adherence and more maybe attendance and so forth because of the virtual platform, or is it because we're in a pandemic and people don't feel that sense of control that they would normally have over their environment and their comings and goings, and maybe using, or I don't want to say using the virtual platform, I don't want to say it as a crutch, but they might be investing more in that now because of what's going on around us from the outside. Your thoughts?
No, I think that's a really great point. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm. So the question is like, how do we keep them engaged? If in fact they are getting some things out of the treatment in this particular modality, what happened? I think there's some things that we're trying to get a sense of. Do we go back to this thing as usual? Or there's some things that we're learning, some innovative ways of doing some things that we shouldn't be going back, as if we're returning back to normal from COVID. And that's the kind of conversations that I'm trying to say, how do we entice that so we can, think about the innovations from all of this.
I'd like to respond to that because I think it is important. We've talked before about making sure our services are accessible in not just in teaching, but especially in service. And so our services are now more accessible to people who need to join, who need to have a session on their lunch hour, or who don't have that transportation to come in. So the idea that we would go back to making them less accessible, for me, would be problematic, especially from a treatment standpoint. You know, we need to have as many avenues to treatment as possible. And virtual for us, of course, is not just by Zoom, but it's also by phone. And so I have a client I meet every week by phone. And so, and that works for her. So yeah, I would lean toward, you know, being able to increase accessibility across the board and hold on to some of the stuff that we've gained.
Okay, I think we have a hand raised from Michelle. Was it-
Mike is one too.
Mike is two, but I thought I saw Michelle Ferrer's hand first, but she seems to have, oh, Michelle Ferron, yes. Unmute Michelle.
Good evening, everyone. I was going to be asking regarding the literature from the Caribbean perspective that we had discussed in our group. So I don't know if it was confidentiality why my team members didn't speak up. But it was always a burning concern, and I would wish for CanPA to address, as I say, be there a resource site, so to speak, for literature from Caribbean perspectives, seeing that, as Doc said earlier, that in our region, the psychology is new in our region, so we would not have had the wealth of written material, textbooks, that sort of thing. So whatever we have, we are in this together, and it should be available for all of us to, as a go-to site for these resources.
That's an excellent point, Michelle. Thank you so much I'm glad that all of you were discussing that. And so there's a couple of things related to that, because as you know, we host a conference every other year. And so many of our colleagues are presenting papers at that conference as well. So really making sure that you get a chance to see the scientific program that allows you to know who are the researchers who are doing work in the region and what is it that they're presenting on. Perfect, excellent opportunity, because you can also reach directly to them and ask for a copy of their presentations if in fact they have not been published yet, in terms of a journal article as well. So making sure that you have access to that is important. Second is also making sure that the articles that are being published in the Journal of Caribbean Psychology, which exists, is also available, and you can access some of that material also from our website. And then third is really doing that kind of inventory of articles, you know, really only research articles. As you know, we can't do the books because they're copyrighted, but certainly we can have images of the books, but definitely making sure that you have articles of materials that have been published focusing on the Caribbean population is a really excellent idea. So having said that, we are in the process of redoing our website, and really bringing in somebody that's going to allow for our members association to be able to access some materials, as well as the general public as well, as a way of making sure some of those things are available to all of you. So really appreciate those comments. I'm glad you guys are talking about these things.
Welcome, thank you.
Mike, you wanted to make a comment?
Yes, and in fact, just one thing also, the issue of accessing Caribbean scholarship came up in our group too. And, you know, one of the things we talked about is that there are models for this, things like the HIV Gateway website and others. And a lot of the psychology literature, there's more than you think, was really the point. And sometimes it's a matter of indexing so that things are accessible online. And furthermore, there's quite a bit of gray literature, government reports and UN reports and funding agents and things like that exist, but they're not, you know, you have to do some detective work. And so, you know, CanPA has a lot of jobs, but another potential job would be, you know, Caribbean's Carapsych info. You know, that really would be very helpful. But the thing I would really wanted to point out was having done my internship, so my post-grad training in isolated areas in the States, like Wyoming, when we were just starting to get grants for telehealth. And a lot of the telehealth was like hike out to the village in the woods once a month and avoid the bears and see the 10 people that live out there. And then we started to think about, remote therapy and supervision support in medicine and psychology. But one of the things that just struck me is, 18 months ago, I think that, the average practitioner would be kind of uncomfortable with security and HIPAA compliance in the States, GDPR in Europe and UK, the Barbados Data Protection Act in Barbados, which is very new, and a lot of the technical pieces, quite apart from the issue of, the implications for therapy process, but just the safety and security of seeing people that's been a massive change in a very short period of time.
Hear, hear. And I know that we've had comments about that, from around the region. I think all of us that are doing therapy are experiencing that the accessibility, it's good. I think it's very, very important. And in some ways it is different for adults and for children, because the accessibility for children, why you don't have to bring the parent doesn't come, but their ability to have therapy and the study as well is a very different experience for them. So yes, Mal, I'm sorry, Joy, unmute, unmute.
Okay, so one of the things that I'm glad about is that I'm hoping I'll be able to do it. My research topic is looking at the impact of community violence on families with special reference to adolescents. And there's a lot of work, a lot of research within the Caribbean. Now, because I'm connected to a university here in the United States, of course, the focus on my sample and things like that would be here. But I wanted to do like a cross reference analysis between the Black families in the Caribbean, in Jamaica, for instance, along with an inner city city in the US, where I have access to that information. So there's a lot. I know Dr. Sam Wan at UE. UE has done a lot of work on community violence, impact of community violence. So it's just getting into the research, getting into the libraries, putting in your information, and a lot of information comes up because a lot of work has been done. And that's a good thing in terms of gathering in Caribbean information. So that's one of my ambitions, to really look at the Black family across the region and across inner city where I'm working right now. So that's something that I'm looking forward to.
That's really great. That's really great. That's awesome. And so what I'm hearing from all of your comments and conversations from clearly that you had in your small group is that maybe a webinar and workshop on conducting Caribbean research during this time of COVID might be in a virtual way, might be really important, maybe useful to a lot of everyone. That's where also we can talk about the repository, but also what are the mechanisms for doing so? What's the research ethics in terms of IRB approval and so forth? That might be really useful to a lot of people. So those are really great comments. Donna Marie, I know you had your hands up before, so I don't know if you want to still say anything.
Sorry, I can't remember what I was going to say, to be honest. But what I will say is that I mentioned this in my group. I love when we say, oh, and Campa should do this and Campa should be at the front of, but I have to remind everybody that we are Campa, that we yeah, excellent. So if there is anything that you feel passionate about, in terms of whether it be the repository or, whatever it is, and you're willing to dedicate some time, there are people that will work with you to get it done. But yeah, you have to step forward and let it be known so that we can actually get some things off the ground. Because the repository, I know that we've been talking about for a long time. It's nothing new.
You know, it's worth pointing out before I forget that, you know, the genesis of the HIV Gateway was here at Cave Hill and with the National HIV/AIDS Commission, and it was Caroline Allen and Clive Landis. And that has worked very well and has stayed quite up to date in terms of both index literature and conference and government literature. So just to say, if we wanted to talk to some folks who have honest to goodness experience right here in the region doing that, those two would be excellent candidates to have a chat.
Yeah, that's awesome. I would definitely be interested. Anybody want to join me on that creating the Caribbean Research Gateway? How fun would that be?
Absolutely.
We are here.
Yes, yes, Michelle, because now we can make that one. Michelle is on my list. Who is the hand? Who is the hand?
I'll go.
Yeah.
Mike is there.
Yes.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
it's not
that's
all
fun.
talk.
And Dizani too.
We are not all talk. We are action people.
I
Yes,
love
yes.
action people. That's my team.
Yes,
Right
yes.
there. That's my team for sure. So yes.
I have a quick comment. So we, you know, you guys mentioned about like your action people and, you know, Campa. This is my first Campa talk. Well, second night of me being here. I didn't even know Campa existed until Dr. Grant. Dr. Grant's awesome, by the way. But I was wondering, have you guys ever thought of maybe doing like mentorship programs for undergraduates who are interested but don't know what to do or where to go? Because, like, I don't know, where I am right now in life is that, you know, I'm an undergrad or a recently graduated undergrad who is trying to figure out what's the next step and how do I go and how do I get more experience? How do I, you know, do what I want to do? So I was wondering if you guys ever thought about doing something like that, where you take undergrads and you like, okay, here are your options. This is what you do. Here's what you would go to school for if you want to become this or that, you know, because I was so misinformed.
I love it. I love it. I love it, Dara.
So that's such a great idea. And we do a little bit of that at UVI in Sci 496, which is practicum in psychology. So as part of the instruction, we have them create a career plan, and we also talk about the difference between getting a master's, or you know what you can do at the master's level, what you can do at the PhD level, what you do to apply to prepare yourself for graduate school, and so forth. And I'm teaching that course this semester. But what I said to them is, we need to be doing this earlier on. You know, not at 496, but I'm sorry, not when people are seniors getting ready to graduate, but when you're sophomore, so that you know that you need to join the psychology club and you need to get to the faculty and do research and make yourself look as good as possible, depending on the program.
Exactly.
I took that class my junior year. We called it careers in psych. But even still, like, there are masters in clinical mental health counseling. What does that even mean? And like, if I want to go into clinical psychology, does that pertain to me? Or do I need to do experimental? Like, things like that for me is like breaking down what all these different types of degrees are and how that's going to influence me in the future. Because like, if I go to school in clinical mental health counseling, what if that doesn't work and they don't take half of my credits in the PsyD program I applied to in the future? You know, like, so I think that's, and just giving kids the opportunity to know where to go and what to do, especially in the Caribbean, so that we can have PhD holding, PsyD holding, practicing psychologists, clinicians that can diagnose and do things, you know. I just think that's so important.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate that point, Anna. So one of the things we can promise, because building a mentorship program for undergraduate students is a task. It is a huge task to be able to take on. But one of the things as we're building the website that we can make sure that we do is to have a student and an early career professional segment of that website that has information in terms of, like you're saying, the different types of degrees, what do you do with them, knowing where are the master's program and doctoral program listing and so forth. We have as a part of the conference, we always have a student we have a number of student sessions as a way for all the students to come together, and they have their own network meeting, their own, sort of like building a sense of coalition among themselves and so forth. So really, that's usually where that builds a lot of momentum. And we do the same thing for early career, also professionals as a part of the conference. So definitely, I'm gonna bring you on to this student initiative that we are spearheading together to make sure that the information that we will be putting on the website will be exactly what you think your colleagues would want to see. So I really appreciate that. Yeah, it was a good work. Yeah.
And I think I see Juanita Wright has a question, and I think we may be wrapping up. So Juanita, please.
A quick one. I was just checking to see if CAPNA actually accredit the psychology courses in the Caribbean.
If CanPA does accredits psychology courses?
Yeah.
No, we don't. One of the things we just in the process of finalizing right now is to create a continuing education unit. So we're just finalizing all of the materials that will enable us, just like you can get APA accredited, to also get CAMPA accreditation, not accreditation, but continuing education credit for the purposes of conferences, workshops, and so forth. And those will be recognized by your licensing board as much as the APA or any other entity that you're also getting in as well. So we're just working on that, and really hoping that by the time we get to the conference in November, that those things will be in place.
And I want to say thank you to everyone. I need to let you know that this is my 33rd wedding anniversary, and I promised that I would be done 6 minutes ago. I am going to say goodbye to you all. I love you. And thank you so
Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary. Happy anniversary.
very much.
Yes.
Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
33 years. That's great.
Well, it really is one. Thank you so much, Rita, for being here. And we certainly want to say a special thank you to all of you for joining us this evening. Many of you who are joining us for the very first time, we say a special thank you to you. And hopefully you'll get a chance to go onto the website, sign on, and be on the mailing list, so that way you're able to get the sort of regular monthly mailing that goes out to our CAMPA folks as well, to the mailing list. We are also on all the social media handles, so you can follow us on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube, as well. We're really spending this virtual time to actually make sure that most people are knowing a little bit more about who we are and what we're doing. So we really invite you to follow us on all of those things, so that you can keep up to date with the stuff that we are doing within CAMPA. And then, as Donna Maria said, CAMPA is all of us. It's not a gather thing. There's not an entity that's running it. It really truly is the collective within the Caribbean, along with our international colleagues. So really hope that you guys will join us for future ones. So thank you so much for being here. Any final thoughts? Anything anybody wanted to add before we close us out for the night?
Thank you. Thank you all. It's a pleasure. It's like a nice Friday evening getaway. And we look forward to all that's happening and working together to build this rich community that we have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you, our amazing speakers. Thank you, Dara. Thank you, Donna. Thank you, Mike, for being here. And of course, thank you all of you for joining us. So stay tuned for next CAMPA Talks. We're trying to do 3 of them before we get to the conference. So looks like next one will be on research. So so take a look, be on the lookout for that as well. Thank you, everyone. Have an awesome night. Be safe. Okay.
Thanks. Bye. Good night.
Bye, everyone. Good
Bye,
night.
everybody.
Good night.
Bye. Thanks, Mike. Mhm.